Hey,
I so excited to be talking to you today about this, Nidhi.
same here, same here.
As, as we've been discussing, Nidhi, today is the day for the CEO, and we're going to be talking about the impact of AI and how to have how to have an AI-led organization and the leadership who's going to be invested in the whole AI story. And one aspect we, of course, realize is the people aspect with which AI and, of course, the culture of the organization. And who better than you to talk about this today with us?
Sure.
Over to you.
All right. So, just to give a quick context, I'm going to start the presentation, Trupti, in a little bit.
Sure.
But like you rightly said, I think AI is definitely taking over. And you know, my background is from a tech company. So, of course, we've been in the midst of AI for a very long time. In fact, much earlier than before it got termed as AI. We had a lot of data analytics, predictive analytics, and kind of work that we were already doing in that space. So it's definitely something that every organization and definitely every CEO should be doubling down on. And while I've been on the tech side, the last few years have really been on the people side, because from my own experience, managing the people is the most important aspect and the only differentiator that's going to happen in the next few years, much as well as how the digital landscape and the digital internet exploded or literally leveled the playing field for real estate businesses, anything that banked on locations. It's AI is going to do pretty much the same thing for all companies by leveling the playing field across technology, right? So you no longer have your business strategy alone rooted, because process and technology both will get commoditized in the long run, which really means that in another 5 years landscape, organizations that have really built their people will have a far better competitive advantage than those that have just leveraged on locations or locally infused business strategies, not to mention technology or processes alone. So that is the segue into my conversation today, and I'll just quickly share it.
Yeah, no, as you pull up the presentation, a quick context to the point that is it right to think that culture only large organizations need to be worried about culture? What about mid-sized organizations? What about greenfield startups that they're starting who are just getting into the organization building phases? What do you think? I mean, what about that?
I think this is a very fair question. And I think rather than that, I'll just converse, because I'll show the demo instead. So yeah, a very good question. And honestly, I think to us, since we're doing both the culture consulting side of the vertical as well as the product space, services are something that I thought would largely come to us, because we've coming from a big conglomerate like Tata's and having done the culture and headed the culture for them. But we're seeing a lot of small companies, people with 100 people, 200 people coming in and realizing that up till 100 or maybe 150 seems to be the sweet spot for the top CEOs and a few underneath them to kind of manage the culture and the ethics, the values, the quality of work that needs to come out of these guys. But after 150, 200 people, everybody seems to be faltering off. It gets into a slightly more chaotic mode. Even if the performance is still somehow what managed, the ability to sustain the organization with the quality of the people in a repeated fashion is definitely suffering. Not to mention that the workplace has completely changed from what we were in when we got in. And so most of us who were raised on our type of command and control structures find it extremely difficult now to manage the workforce, which is looking at more coaching enabled work structures. So yes, that is one thing that is definitely something that is in the play here. Here's what we're doing, and I think I'll open it after a quick demo. We'll open it to conversations, because this is more of that kind of space. Um, but if you really look at how we are leveraging culture at this point, a lot of the big companies, whether it is Netflix or Deutsche Bank or Google's of the world, and a lot of the Fortune 100 companies I've had the pleasure of working with, many of them focus a lot on their people, but a lot of them are still in the legacy systems, so to say, use the technology word, which is largely legacy systems, meaning offline workshops, an event here and there, investing a little bit in their infrastructure so the people feel more comfortable. But that's really like the entry point of people experience, right? Rather than just ensuring that this is a sustained leadership development period. I think that's where the flaw is. And for us, we're very clear that we are using the product that we are creating to do two very good changes, which is something I couldn't find when I was heading culture. One was business enabled cultural transformation, which means not people transformation for the sake of it, but people transformation in a very integrated, aligned way in which it supports the business strategy, not just now, but whatever is meant in the next few years, right? So if you're
Yeah.
looking at 3x or 5x times the scale, then are you really developing your people to be ready for something like this, right? Because if you are
Right.
not, then succession pipelines, the ability to manage quality, the ability to manage retention and incoming talent, all of that becomes an issue eventually. So that's one thing that we're very, very careful about. Second thing, and the most important thing, is that business is only worried about a few things, right? They're worried about getting their sales right. They're worried about optimizing or automating their infrastructure. They're worried about making sure that people are aligned in the objectives towards the company objectives, rather than in being a consistent push and pull between them. And the product that we are doing has some of these USPs integrated in. Now, why did we choose this product of all the technology, backing I had for 25 years working with the top guys? My own personal experience working with some of these folks at the tops, especially CTO levels at companies like BSkyB or Sony or Deutsche Bank, Morgan Stanley, etc., has been that in the long run, we've recommended some $1 million to $1 billion spend worth of systems to them. But organizations in the long run, the ones who have been really able to turn themselves around using the systems and the architectures and the business architectures we've supported or suggested, are people who had a good handle on their people. So coming back after 15, 18 years of working there, I realized that it's not really the technology. Technology, of course, is great, right? It levels the playing field for an incumbent as well as somebody who's been in the system for a long while. But people, the ability to manage the people in the organization is really where your core intelligence resides and runs through the system, through the processes, through the technology to deliver the kind of customer experience you're looking at. And this is where the core of the problem started. And when I had all the money in the world to buy the systems and I couldn't find them, is when I decided to build our own. In our system, there are few things that we found were key issues. Number one issue was there are learning management systems, but there's no leadership development systems. There's a big difference between the two. Learning management systems are linearly built. They are largely built to do techno-functional training in a very linear fashion, which means you can do technology, you can even do sales and some amount of marketing, high level understanding onto them, but you cannot really build leadership in sales or leadership of processes or leadership to optimize process or growth, organizational growth, or leadership around digital transformation, change management. That isn't there. There is a good basic understanding, but like I said, the core aim for most of these leadership management systems, right from Coursera and LinkedIn to smaller ones like Harappa and others that we were evaluating, is that none of them was really entering into the core of leadership. Literally, everybody was talking a lot about making content available at lesser prices, varied content topics, etc., rather than being about user and what would transform the user into a specific kind of thinking or behavior. So that was one core issue, which was what we're targeting through the app, right? The second core issue was adoption. Even if you did the best of the world stuff out there, people just aren't interested. They want to go to office, they want to work, they want to get stuff, and they want to get out. And the reason for that was the what is in it for me is not clear, is one, right? Of course, they know what's in it for the business, but they don't know what is in it for us. And after a while, that pull and marketing and the badges and the leadership stuff that you create does not have the sustained pull to get that person to adopt that product over a period of time. So that's another USP that we built in by using a lot of the gamification principles as opposed to the two, which is what is widely used right now.
Right.
The third important thing that we realized, which was a big miss, was the fact that we're doing a lot of culture. The peers in the HR system administration and some organizations are doing a whole lot on the HR system, but somehow it seems to fall flat and doesn't seem to link very well with the business strategy. So HR and people transformation tends to become a cost rather than an investment in the business in the long term. Not because that vertical is not needed, everybody understands that, but because over a period of time, nobody has been able to measure growth or align it in such a manner that it is good for the business, which is what we are doing. We're very clear that it has to be a precision engineering model rather than a one size fit all content consumption model, right? So those are the 2 or 3 things that I would say. And of course, a deep dive is needed for those which is relevant to come in. Not to mention that, as you rightly said, Trupti, even on the services side, we're seeing a whole lot of mid-size and even smaller startups come in and ask us how to build the organization rather than just leverage HR processes, copy paste them and put them here and hope that they work, right? Because they know and there have been systems where it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
And so that's been where we have been.
Yeah. So, Nidhi, one thing I think fundamentally what has supplemented this whole thought process and around culture and the reinforcement learning and the bite-sized learning that we keep talking about is the usage of AI, right? As ironic as it is that we keep getting worried about that AI is going to lose, make people lose jobs and so on and so forth. Here, I definitely see an amazing way how AI is supplementing the individual growth as well as helping us reach to the business matrix that we talk about. Can you just please help us, maybe decode that a little bit for us, and then we
Oh,
can move it to the
absolutely.
demo?
That's a beautiful question, Trupti, because I think one is we started early on, and Tata is somewhat of a conscious company themselves, and we are also very clear we want to be on the conscious side and use technology for good is one of the things that we wanted to do. So we're very clear about how we save our data, how we make sure that the people are transformed with a certain degree of consciousness, and just create a product that will just be grappled up by the customer because that's their need. AI, I think, has been extremely, extremely beneficial to us. And the fact that we've been trained as a company on technology first before moving into behavioral and leadership and the other things of it has definitely been a great segue into creating a product that works, because now you basically have the behavior and the leadership side, again, which is a very nuanced space and hasn't been targeted for ages, in my opinion. Completely unstructured data, if you talk in a technology lingo, and then converting that into some kind of an intelligence which the business can then use to get a competitive advantage or to sort out its people in a slightly more organic and strong fashion is has been very well done through AI. Just to give you an example, a lot of what the content where that we deconstruct and reconstruct within the app in a coaching language, because the app is largely a coaching personal coach literally to every employee out there, right?
Right,
And
right.
based on their assessments, based on a Netflix kind of recommendation engine that ensures it gets tailored to the user, rather than a one size fit all video kind of stuff. We've not just used the recommendation engine, we're also using AI to do our images, right? The aesthetics of it, we've used AI to generate the content and make sure it's done. And yeah, it's extremely difficult to use AI right now because it's very, very naive. And there's a whole lot of biases. Even in 5 conversations, it starts developing a bias. So we have, for a simple deconstruct of content, we have a 92-pager prompt. Like that is the degree of precision tuning you have to do to when working with the AI to get results that are meaningful. But yes, it is 100% much more easily used than something else and frees up the space of the team to work on fine tuning the content, reading, rereading, adapting, all of that, right? Which is a great thing.
Absolutely. So, Nidhi, I'm sure or the audience is also super excited to take a look at the gamified version of this culture building platform that we keep talking about. Would you like to show us a quick demo of the?
Yeah, I'm just doing that. Give me a minute.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the app, and like I said, the focus of the app is very different. Everything that we have done about the app is extremely different from what you'll expect out there, because you have to do something extra out of the ordinary to get extraordinary results, right? And that was a starting line, right? We cannot do the clinical set of here you go with some videos and happy watching. We wanted to ensure that there was a storytelling. And as I said earlier, there are 16 gamification rules which make sure that a user gets pulled into it. And that was one of our constraints, that it has to be adopted well. And we want to, of course, get better and better at it. At this point, I think 14 or 15 out of those principles have been used, but we can definitely go deeper. This is what it does. When you get into the app as a user, all the complicated things that we've talked about are at the back end, right? The benefits of it goes to the business and their dashboard, their admin dashboard. But for the user, we want it to be a simple process. They come in, they do something, they get out. And over a period of drip irrigation is when you start seeing the change in them. Now, of course, there are faster ways to do this because we allow a corporate journey as opposed to just a person journey. So if you're very clear as a business that you want to introduce innovation as a change, growth mindset, ethics, simple work ethics and professionalism in your incumbent workforce, or you are looking at upgrading the ones who are talking to the customer, or you're looking at upgrading certain skills like sales, etc., to your team, not just your main core organization, but to the entire team, because we've always been of the understanding and the experience that you cannot put a Ferrari engine to an ambassador car and hope that it goes for on the run. You have to start updating the tires. A little bit of servicing is needed for across, right? So this app allows you to do that. It allows you to do targeted interventions on specific groups, at the same time do a broad brushstroke across the organization so that they are also more appreciative and flexible to the changes that are happening at the top and their needs, right, to support them. So if you look at the app, it is very much like a Netflix and Duolingo mix, because these are the only two that are doing extremely great when it comes to content consumption and learning. And here it allows you to create your list, create your journeys. It has 6 masteries in there so that a user is holistically catered. For example, sales, right? Sales as a skill is not just about negotiation. It's also about presentation. It's also about self-awareness, also about being in the moment, responding to the client. Those kind of skills are spherical skills. That's why I said early on that leadership cannot be built in a linear fashion. So when you're learning with a spherical skill, you have to approach it spherically, which is why you have for everything that you've said and the assessment you want to do, we support that with everything, with different things from different masteries. So if you tell me sales is something you want to do, in mastering myself, I will talk about communication, I'll talk about presentation, I'll about self-awareness, I'll talk about humor and the role it plays in sales, I'll talk about trust building, right? In mastering my leadership, I'll talk about how to take ownership of a project, ownership of a conversation, right? So even that is there. Then relationship with the customer, how do you set up with vendors, with partners, how do you network within the customer hierarchy, within your own organization to ensure that your projects go seamless. Then mastering your purpose is a lot about whether you're in business or an entrepreneur, how do you navigate that? So there's a lot of content around sales, innovation, incubation, even robotics and AI that helps you understand what are skills that are needed in a very quick fashion. Then talks about motivations and challenges. We're very, very particular. Like I said, this is a transformation app, leadership transformation coach app. So for sure, it has, of course, the 4 clear masteries that help you with success, but the 2 clear masteries that help you with happiness, because both of these are a good mixed in order to be productive. To walk you through one of these right now and to show you how this works, if you look at one, say, leading with connection, it talks about, it has 2 parts. You have micro shifts. You've taken the entire content around it and converted into micro shifts. Each of these micro shifts are only and only application based. There is no theory, right? We don't want the user to become wiser. We want the user to become better, right? So there's a big difference in the task and the ability to act. So if you look at it, leading with connection, it has these micro shifts. You shift from ego to openness, bring presence to the conversation. Emotions are data, not disruptions, right? So you slowly and slowly start weeding out the things that disallow or disqualify a person to connect with their team, with their folks, right? Now, if you look at shifting from ego to openness, right, it has about 13 to 14 themes, each, which is small, quick reads. And each of these themes is customized. So as a user, if you feel my executive needs only 8 of these, but my fresher needs 14, that's fine. You can go to the user profile and customize it. It starts with a simple thing. It tells you why this is important. So relevance is said to be 80% of the learning. If the user finds a learning relevant, they will go through whatever it takes to get there. So make sure that the learning is relevant to them. Then we talk about the core of the learning. What is the truth behind that? Little bit of a concept, right? I would love to actually read out a little bit, but let's say we just do a little here. It says openness isn't about giving away your power. It's how you become powerful without posturing, right? So it gives you a difference between how do you perceive ego and why would you not want to be open, right? People think open means being powerless, right? And ego means being in command. So it takes care of that. Then it starts talking about some of the subconscious programming that needs to happen here, right? Because a transformation is a you transformation, which means you go from understanding something to becoming something to eventually having the tools to action on it, right? So the way we look at transformation, where we say transformation is a shift in perspective internalized, right? A shift in perspective internalized. So first we look at how to shift that perspective of the user, and then we look at what are the internal levers like beliefs, identities, doubts, challenges in trying to apply something like this before we hand over the tools and say, now you go, right?
Right.
So you go deeper into the identity of things. We give real world examples of how people have used it. When does resistance show up? So these are some of the doubts that people have. If I don't assert myself, I'll get overlooked, right? Because you're talking about openness and taking everybody in rather than trying to control the situation, right? So then it says, okay, sometimes it feels that way, especially in fast moving spaces, but openness is in silence, where it's presence without pretense. And then it gives you some reflections. What is it that you can do today? How can you start, stop, continue, clarity, and eventually ends up with three questions that we ask. One, fill in the blanks. So softly builds into it and moves you from passive reading to an active recipient of that conversation, right? So you choose one, you've got these mascots that guide you throughout the journey, right? And you get awards, rewards
Yeah.
for these.
Please,
So
I, this is definitely so exciting, Nidhi. And I think one thing which is absolutely something that super excites me is that the fact that we're doing this at scale, right? We're looking at an entire organization and we're trying to do this at scale, and you're giving them multiple journeys, not which align not just to the enterprise matrix, you're also aligning them to the personal growth that each every individual or every conscious leader, so much to say, is would be interested in.
yeah, you cannot grow an organization without growing the people inside the organization. We've done it at the cost of the people, and the current workforce is definitely not something who will appreciate that anymore. So even if you're trying to gain loyalty from your current force, not to mention transform them, make them better leaders at the fraction of a cost, not to and at their pace, there is no other product out in the market that does that, right?
Absolutely.
Here is like a screenshot of what that looks like, what the gamification looks like, right? So you have streaks, active days, how many wisdom, compassion, energy points have you created, how many powers have you gotten, how many demons, which is basically the challenges that come at the end of a level, have you defeated, and so on. So yeah, we're definitely very into this idea of ensuring that each organization is supported by its people and not reduced by it, right? So we can
Uh,
move the people from liabilities to assets really quickly.
That's a very interesting point, and we should. I mean, we could have a conversation around that itself. Some other day we should.
True.
So, Nidhi, just conscious of the time, we have another 4 to 5 minutes, and I'm going to take a few very interesting questions that I see on the chat from our audience. I think one thing definitely, as we talk about upward, there is one question which talks about how does user data and privacy gets ensured, especially in regulated industries. Your thoughts around that?
Yeah, 100%. We're very clear that we only and only pass data. Like I said, there are two journeys, personal journeys and corporate infused journeys. Corporate infused journeys, the data goes to the corporate, and that's very clear to the user. We do not share the minute details, but we do share the overarching understanding to the corporate where this is going, right? Because they need that. If they know that a lot of people are reading Manage the Manager, then they know there's something wrong with that particular geography or that particular project. But personal data, we keep extremely different from there, and we do not share that. So you could be reading about relationships with your manager or vendor relationships or even spousal, how to have a good relationship. It doesn't really matter. We are very clear. We don't show any of that.
Okay, great. I see another question on the flexibility of the platform upward, maybe when it comes to creating or importing custom content. So,
Right now, a very good question, and we've been dabbling with that for a while. Right now, I think we're going to go with the content that we have, because the content that we have as a very coaching, it has been done after months of effort, right? So the essence, it's not just academic content. And I don't really just say, if I'm teaching you Blue Ocean strategy, I won't say this is the framework, these are the 4 steps. It has been completely distilled into a coaching institute, which feels like a conversation rather than an infusion of cognitive content, right?
Right.
So in right now, yes, we could take it, but we will leverage that into our narrative and build it into the product that way. But as it is, no, we're very clear that not right now.
Okay. Okay. And I think one more question which comes to my mind is, of course, we have global audience today, so there could be a possibility. As I see right now, we are working on this particular app from the majorly English language, right? Do we have plans to move it into multilingual or bilingual or something?
Yeah. The architecture extremely scalable, and every little thing that we have done, we've made sure that there are no hard variables. So the
Okay.
one translation API is on top of it, it can easily be run on it. But at this point, we're still English focused, but yeah, it is something we're looking at in the next release.
Sounds definitely sounds interesting. This yeah. There's one another question I can see, a very interesting question is, how do we incorporate customer feedback into the development cycle?
This is I have 2 types of customer feedbacks, because this is an extremely interesting conversation. One
Mm-hmm.
is the customer feedback that I get from you guys, right? Which is my folks, the ones who will use the app, which is, and the reason we've kept the pricing so extremely low is that we can taking as many people as we want,
Right.
and we would love to have the whole world on it. Then there are the customers that are of the businesses that we support, right? So if you're looking at, say, um, Deutsche Bank. Now, Deutsche Bank has its sets of customers, which gives in data, right? These are 2 types of
Mhm.
customers: their own B2B customers and their own B2C customers. That
Right.
kind of data can also be filtered into it. So in the next release, what we are doing is we are integrating the app with the corporate everyday scenarios, right? So if it's hiring freshers from or in bulk, or hiring key people and making sure they are aligned with the culture of the company, right from nuances like this to the fact
Mhm.
that your current CSI, the customer information, or your appraisals, none of those get fed back into a learning management system right now. And all of that will get fed back in a very simple way.
Right. So we're essentially considering, we're taking a look at the feedback, and then we're converting it into insights and making those changes into the journeys individually or even at the organization level. That's essentially.
Yes, at this point, we are leveraging more on the experience we've had to build the app, because we have ample expertise in this space now. But in the short and the long term, we want to fine tune it to the corporates. But that said, people development is nothing that any singular corporate owns at this point. Most people behavior are very linked towards certain values and certain behaviors, which is where we are targeting at this point.
It's been a lovely conversation, Nidhi. Thank you so much. Really appreciate what you walked us through. And like I said, we should have a couple of discussions needed on a few topics that you would love to talk about, how to move people from the liability side to the asset side. I think that's
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice, Durga, and thanks you for having me. I hope everybody had something to take away from. That would be great. If not, reach
absolutely.
out anytime guys feel like. And Trupti, thanks again for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Nidhi.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.